The sun had barely crested the mountains over Helmand Province when the rotors of two CH-47 Chinooks tore through the dry morning air. Inside were MARSOC raiders from Marine Special Operations Team 8211, fully loaded and ready to hit a suspected Taliban compound deep in contested territory. This wasn't just a killer capture op. Intelligence suggested the presence of a foreign fighter facilitation cell, possibly linked to bomb-making operations that had taken out several coalition convoys in the last 60 days. The mission was codenamed Operation Steel Dagger. Located in the Upper Sangin Valley, the objective compound was a hardened cluster of buildings used intermittently by Taliban commanders and facilitators. Pattern of Life ISR had revealed regular traffic in and out during nighttime hours. SIGINT picked up radio chatter referring to foreign fighters and new material, likely referencing explosives. The MARSOC raiders were supported by a full stack of enablers. This was no lone element mission. The support structure was a textbook example of joint interagency fusion. 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment, Night Stalkers, provided infiltration and exfiltration with MH-47s. Air Force Special Tactics JTACs embedded with the team ensured direct communication with supporting aircraft. USAF AC-130W Stinger 2 loitered overhead for overwatch and fire support. Predator drone ISR was already in orbit, providing thermal pattern of life and early warning. SIGINT operators from NSA were pushing real-time intercepts to the operations center. Afghan partner forces from the NDS National Directorate of Security were staged nearby for post-raid exploitation. Each asset had a precise role. If this went sideways, it wouldn't be for lack of support. The con-op had been planned over 72 hours at Camp Bastion. Imagery analysts studied terrain and choke points. Engineers modeled breaching options. The JTAC worked target decks and ROE thresholds. Contingency plans were set, CASEVAC flight lines, alternate landing zones, and fallback comms relays. The mission briefing was clinical. Each man knew his job. The lead raider element would fast rope onto an overwatch ridge, then bound toward the compound under cover of darkness. Assault 2 would land closer to breach. NDS teams would move in post-clearance to gather intel and establish a holding perimeter. At 0415 local time, the birds dropped low into the valley. Dust filled the cabins. The call came. Team leaders gave final checks. Nods down, safeties off. The first MH-47 flared hard over the LZ. MARSOC raiders spilled out, securing the perimeter in seconds. The second aircraft followed 90 seconds later, unloading the breach team. The valley was still, too still. ISR pinged a thermal anomaly in the back of the compound. Movement. The JTAC relayed to the gunship. Eyes on. Confirm movement. Do not engage unless fired upon. Quick pause before we continue. If you're enjoying the video so far and want to support the channel, consider becoming a member. You'll get some awesome perks like exclusive content, early access to videos, and more. Just hit the join button below or check the description, and Special Ops 6 is now live. If you're into elite gear, field-ready morale patches, and real operator culture, this is for you. Tap the link in the description or head to the channel and click the store link. Join the team, grab your gear, and support the mission, and let's get back to it. The raiders advanced in a wedge, moving methodically toward the main structure. Just as the breach element approached the outer wall, a burst of automatic fire erupted from a nearby outbuilding. Rounds cracked overhead. Dust kicked up from near misses. "Contact right, 25 meters," someone yelled. The team immediately broke into fire teams. The point man fired back with controlled bursts as another raider popped a flashbang into the doorway. Inside, they found 2 fighters, one already down. The other tried to reach for a weapon but was neutralized. No casualties yet. The compound breach commenced. The breacher set a door charge. "Stand by. Breach in 3, 2, 1. The blast echoed across the valley. Raiders surged into the interior. Each room was methodically cleared. They encountered 2 more hostiles, both armed with AKs and suicide vests, but they were engaged before they could trigger anything. Within minutes, the compound was under control. Now came the real work. Raiders pulled hard drives, phones, and maps. NDS forces were brought in to start on-site translation and biometric collection. One of the detainees was flagged by NSA as a courier who had crossed from Pakistan 3 times in the last month. His presence confirmed this site wasn't just tactical, it was strategic. Above, the AC-130W remained on station. ISR relayed heat signatures of possible reinforcements on foot, closing in from the east. The compound was secure, but the clock was ticking. The MARSOC team had less than 20 minutes to finish SSE, sensitive site exploitation, before possible QRF, Taliban Quick Reaction Force response. ISR platforms overhead picked up heat signatures moving in from the east and south. Armed fighters, possibly in platoon strength, closing the distance fast. The JTAC relayed real-time updates. The AC-130W adjusted orbit, ready to deliver firepower if things went south. Meanwhile, SIGINT reported increased radio traffic, confirming that word of the raid had spread. The team leader ordered the raiders to shift from clearance to defense. They established hasty fighting positions within and around the compound. Claymore mines were set at likely approach routes. NDS troops were positioned on the outer cordon with PKMs and RPGs prepared to hold their ground. Inside, the SSE team worked fast. They discovered a hidden room beneath a rug in the main building. Inside, crates of HME, homemade explosives, detonation cords, and circuit boards, all components of IEDs. One of the NDS operators recognized a signature device type used in recent attacks in Kandahar. The clock read 0503. First light was less than 30 minutes away. At 0508, the first shots cracked from the East Ridge. Taliban fighters had reached overwatch positions and opened fire on the compound. MARSOC raiders responded with controlled bursts, marking positions with IR strobes for the AC-130. Gunship! This is Echo 1. Danger close. Grid mark Bravo 7, fire when ready. A low rumble followed by thunder. The 105mm howitzer on the gunship opened up, shredding the enemy fighting position. Screams on the Taliban radio nets followed, but it wasn't over. ISR feeds showed multiple technicals with mounted PKs and DSHK heavy machine guns moving toward the valley. The QRF was larger than expected. The raiders had to move. The team lead initiated Exfil Plan Bravo, fall back to a secondary LZ 800 meters south, where the terrain allowed better cover. The original LZ was now too hot. The raiders broke contact with suppressive fire. NDS provided rear security while the Americans moved fast through irrigation ditches and tree lines. Drones tracked the enemy force, relaying their movements. The 160th SOAR was already inbound. 2 MH-47s would insert flares and smoke, then extract on a 2-minute ground time. The raiders hit the LZ just before 0530. Tracer fire lit up the sky as Taliban fighters pursued. The JTAC called in another gun run. The AC-130W delivered danger close fire support, blanketing the hillside. The first bird touched down under fire. Raiders dragged detainees and intel bags aboard. The second bird hovered as RPGs flew overhead, missing by inches. The crew chief screamed over comms, "All aboard, go, go, go." The rotors lifted off just as the sun crested the ridge. Once airborne, the raiders conducted battle damage assessment. One Marine had a minor shrapnel wound, treated en route. No KIAs. Several Taliban fighters confirmed KIA via ISR. The compound was obliterated minutes after exfil by an F-16 strike to deny materiel use. Back at Camp Bastion, the hard drives and biometric intel told the bigger story. The site was a logistical hub for cross-border weapon smuggling and foreign fighter trafficking. One of the IDs matched a high-value facilitator the CIA had been tracking for over a year. The intel led to 3 more raids in the next 10 days across Helmand and Nimruz provinces, disrupting enemy networks ahead of the spring offensive. Operation Steel Dagger became a case study in joint force integration. Marine raiders, working shoulder to shoulder with Air Force JTACs, Night Stalkers, NDS partners, and NSA SIGINT, had executed a surgical strike in one of the most dangerous parts of the country. It wasn't just a kill mission, it was shaping the battlefield, and as the war dragged on, it was missions like this that quietly changed the tide, one compound at a time. The sun was barely up when the MH-47s crossed back into friendly airspace. Inside, the cabin was thick with sweat, dust, and adrenaline. The mission was technically over, but for the raiders, debrief and analysis were just beginning. Once back at Camp Bastion, the MARSOC team was ushered into a secure room. Still in kit, they walked through the timeline, step by step. Intelligence officers listened carefully. What went right, what went wrong, who was encountered, what was recovered. The JTAC provided battle damage estimates confirmed by ISR feed. The SSE team presented evidence, including phone numbers, maps, laptop contents, and biometrics. One item stood out: a ledger showing monthly payments to fighters, weapons purchased across the border, and photos of Western military positions. The commander nodded grimly. This wasn't just a cell. It was a node. The kind of node that fed multiple networks. Taking it out had ripple effects. Within 48 hours, JSOC tasking changed across the region. Ranger elements redirected patrol zones. CIA operators began tracking names and phone numbers pulled from the raid. An Air Force cyber operations team took down a server linked to the compound's IP trail. Back in the field, MARSOC's actions forced the enemy to adapt. Communications went dark in southern Helmand. Insurgents scrambled to relocate cache and fighters. Signals intelligence dried up temporarily, a sign that the strike had caused major disruption. For the Marines involved, the mission carried a heavy weight. One raider, a staff sergeant on his third tour, later reflected in a closed-door interview, "We trained for a target like this, but you never really understand the scale until you see those hard drives, those photos, the kids being taught to plant IEDs. That hits different. We weren't just fighting insurgents, but we were trying to stop the next generation from being weaponized." Several team members received commendations. The JTAC earned a Bronze Star with Valor. The team leader was nominated for a Navy Cross. But for most of them, the true reward was seeing how their work fed into the broader fight. The mission's success was not solely MARSOC's doing. The contributions of support units were pivotal. The 160th SOAR pilots flew under heavy fire, navigating terrain filled with IR decoys and possible ambushes. Without their precise timing and bravery, the exfil might have failed. AC-130W Stinger II. Prey gunners executed danger-close runs within 100 meters of friendly positions. Their accuracy and fire discipline prevented American or Afghan casualties. NSA and CIA provided critical pre-mission intelligence. It was their data mining and cell signal triangulation that helped locate the compound in the first place. And the NDS partners, despite being lightly equipped, held their cordon under pressure and helped identify recovered explosives that matched known Taliban signatures. It was, in every sense, a joint fight. Weeks later, MARSOC elements remained active in Helmand, but the tempo shifted. The Taliban, while still operational, showed signs of disarray. Multiple emirs relocated, explosive incidents dropped in frequency. Propaganda videos promised revenge, but ISR showed a drop in insurgent coordination. The Helmand raid didn't end the war, but it taught something critical. When special operations forces synchronize their skills with intelligence, precision aviation, and trusted allies, even a small team can dismantle a network. Years later, many of the details of the mission remained classified. But within MARSOC and among the raider community, Operation Steel Dagger became a benchmark. Not for the size of the raid or the volume of enemy killed, but for the way it demonstrated what Marine special operators were capable of, deep behind enemy lines, outnumbered and outgunned, yet decisive and surgical. It was a raid few civilians ever heard about, but for those who wore the patch, it was a moment that defined their legacy. The Helmand raid reminded the enemy that no compound was too remote, no safe house too hidden, and no network too untouchable. And for every raider who walked out of that LZ with dust on their boots and fire in their chest, it was proof of what quiet professionals can do when the mission matters. Remember to like, subscribe, and comment so you don't miss out.